real wild one for you this week. So this, I guess you could say this episode is semi-anonymous. This person wanted to remain nameless for very, very, very understandable reasons. And I'll get to that in 1 minute. But when I think about the craziest stories from, at least a certain part of my life, I'd say probably from like 16 to 20, literally every single one of them probably couldn't even have happened if not for one thing. And that one thing is a fake ID. Fake IDs have probably led to the most crazy story. If you added up all the kinds of crazy stories, having a fake ID is probably essential to all kinds of them, right? I mean, it's like the kind of shit I got into and was able to get into just because of this little fake thing that I had that lied about my age. It's wild. It boggles my mind. I can't even think of all the times. There's no possible way I could think of all the times, and not just because of all the booze and drugs that I was on at the time that they happened. The reason I'm talking so much about fake IDs is because our guest today, when he was actually at the age when he needed a fake ID himself, he became... Actually, no, it is the right word. He became a kingpin of fake IDs. He's like the Heisenberg of fake IDs. His story is crazy. He tells it from the very beginning to the very end. He had a literal empire that he and one of his other friends started. And within, I don't know, a year or two, as he says it, he had fistfuls and money and hidden all over the place. It's absolutely insane. I don't want to give too much away, but it's just crazy. I loved talking to this dude. I was just about to say his name, but I can't do that because he asked me not to. So you're not going to know his name, but you are going to hear his story, and it is truly wild. Again, I wanted to make sure that you guys get the whole spectrum of all different kinds of stories that we got, and this certainly fits that bill. The story's crazy. You're going to love it. If you want to be a guest on the show, go to The Private Record and submit yourself as a potential guest. We cannot wait to hear your story. And if you want to follow us on socials, we're at The Private Record all over the place. Instagram, TikTok, all that. And of course, please don't forget to subscribe at YouTube, our official channel at The Private Record over there. And if you like this video, click the like button and comment. It really does help us out a lot. I want to do this forever. I love doing this. I don't ever want to stop. And the more you like it, the more you subscribe, the more you share it with your friends, the more you comment, the more likely I am to be able to do that for you, for the world, and for myself. So I love you. Thank you so much. As usual, you are my lover. You are my loved one. I couldn't do this without you. I appreciate you so much. Enjoy the show. Thank you very much. Welcome to The Private Record. We are excited to have you here. I know a very little bit about your story, but I can't wait to hear all of it because it sounds fucking crazy. But why don't we just briefly, before we jump in, you introduce yourself, use your real name if you want. If you want to use a fake name, use that one. And then just tell us like basically what you submitted. Tell us like either the genre or the headline of your story, and then we can jump right in.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. My name's and a while ago I ran a fake ID business that grew into a pretty large enterprise.
Hell yeah, dude. All right, cool. I'm so excited for this. Let's get right into it. Start wherever you want to start and let's go.
Yeah, all right. So I'd say around the age 19 or so, me and my buddy kind of led the charge at first, trying to figure out how to develop a fake ID. Right?
Like for yourselves, right?
Yeah, but we ultimately had the idea of reselling.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the beginning, you were like, we're going to turn this into something, right? Not just for yourselves.
That was the goal. But of course, you had to make some prototypes and test it out. So at first, that there was a lot of trial and error, the first year or so. We had to figure out, and I could get into the nitty gritty of how.
I would love to know specifically what you guys did, especially as it's starting out. Like, how did you even, because if I'm picturing myself at 19, I'm like, what is even the first thing I would do? And that's where I would end up stopping because I don't even know the first thing I would do, right? So like how you guys had the idea, and then what are the steps you take to try to get it an accurate template?
Yeah. Don't recommend doing this, but what we did. We so as far as I can remember, the first steps were more or less like finding the template. So of course you got to search like the dark sides of the web, some ID templates.
Yeah.
We were based in California, so we were looking for California IDs. And just to preface, this was before the new age California IDs.
Okay, right.
Groups California IDs that are much harder to plagiarize and fake. So jumping back to that old era of IDs, they were somewhat easier to fake. So we would find the template. Then the next step was because there's a few parts of the ID that need to be faked and plagiarized to get past either a cop or a bouncer or whoever.
Right.
The three main ones is your signature on it, the barcode on the back, like you know how you have the black barcode that swipes. Just swipe and have your credentials in the barcode. It also had the seal, the glitter seal across the front of the seal. And it also had the glow-in-the-dark state seal as well.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Those were probably, I think, the top four that you had to get right. Or if any of those were off, like, the bouncer would be like, nah, man. This is fake. Also, a big thing that people wouldn't normally realize is the texture as well. The laminate that the DMV uses is pretty unique compared to most consumer laminates. So you had to find the right texture as well, because a lot of time, and thickness, because they'll immediately be like, oh, this is too thin.
Right. Because people who handle IDs often, they'll touch several at one period of time, and then one that feels off, they're like, no, this is bullshit, right?
Yeah. Instantly they could tell.
Right.
Like, oh no, this is fake. So, after finding the template, which we would then edit with Photoshop. That was our one of our main tools. Figuring out the laminate and barcode was probably the toughest part. We had to source and find. We just scoured the internet and source and find a supplier. I don't exactly remember where we found this guy, but this laminate we found was super rare. I think only him and maybe one other guy was making it, and of course it was on the black market. It wasn't in retail. So this guy would sell the laminate, and the laminate was meant for IDs. Like I think this guy was meant to slang for producers of IDs, right? So it also had the barcode built into the laminate as well. So it was like a 2-for-1.
Wow.
So luckily we got that laminate. I think we just, obviously bought a little bit at first to test it out. And that step was pretty good. We figured that out. We had to get a hot press laminate because we print the paper, we print the IDs on the photo paper, press the laminate to the front and back. So that's kind of one step of it. Another part is the seal, the state seal part. So that was also tricky to figure out too, how to apply that properly.
Yeah.
So we had to make somewhat of a paint or like a goop that mimicked the glittery consistency that you see in the IDs. I don't fully remember exactly what types of paints we found, but we created some concoction of different paints and glitter and goop to make some paint, and we got a silk screen. So we got a silk screen with the seals printed on the silk screen, and we would lay down the laminates, just like any shirt, right? You lay down the laminate on the silk screen, and we would spread the paint across the paper the photo paper, or sorry, the laminate, and it would print the shiny glittery state seal across the laminate, which was pretty innovative at the time.
Yeah, that sounds so tricky. Like, so just real quick, like I know there's more, but how like long of a process is this for you guys? Is this like on the back burner, or is this something you guys are like, we're going to do this, and you're kind of working at a fast clip?
Yeah, so we were young. We didn't really have like, full-time jobs or lives or anything. So it was kind of just free range, man. We just kind of, as much time as we could. It was kind of just, let's figure this out.
And this is like right after high school, right? I guess you're 19, you're just fresh out of high school, and you guys are like, let's be the guy. Because I remember, just as an anecdote, we're probably at least close enough to the same age, but I remember when I wanted a fake ID, the way to do it was so shady, A, and B, it was, in retrospect, extremely dangerous. Like, I would go down to Alvarado, down over like in Echo Park, and there were those guys that would go like this, fake, 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 ID, 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 ID. And I went with like 3 of my buddies. We just gave a total stranger in a McDonald's parking lot, like, I don't even remember how much money it was. And then they needed to take the picture in like the back of some weird like trailer. Like, it was like, I think about my dumbass self back then, and it's like, what was I thinking? But it kind of speaks to the reason why you're doing this. Kids at that age, at that time in their life, would do almost anything for a fake ID. So what your enterprise is like, it's very obvious why you would try to hustle this so hard, because everyone wants one and they're all shit. I mean, the one I got was pure shit. It would work at like the liquor store where some old sleepy dude would sell me a 12-pack of Bud Light, but like it wouldn't work at like a bar. You know what I mean? So like, it being good, it's priceless. I would have paid any amount of money that I could get my hands on for something that you're describing. But anyway, yeah, keep going.
Totally right. And I think that's what we saw, was there's demand for it. Like, we wanted it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And kids from 18 to up to 20 are just
totally
all down for it.
Yeah.
So jumping back to the development process, it was, figuring those things out took months and trial and error, right? It wasn't like instantly we figured it out.
Right.
But I'm jumping to like the solution we did find, like, so we figured out the state seal, which would be printed onto the laminate itself. And we would do 8 at a time per page.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering about that. Right. Okay.
One per page, right? So more bang for your buck per page, which is nice. And we found glow in the dark ink, and we figured out the seal to print. That was relatively straightforward. Print the glow in the dark seals per slot on the paper, and then the signature in the photos was also tricky at first. This was a while back, so technology wasn't as good as it is today. And we had to figure out a way to get somebody's photo to match, like, because DMV photos are, have like that weird blue background.
Totally, it's hard to mimic that.
Pixelated and a little weird, like the dimension. So we had to figure that out. So at first we built our own backdrop and tried to emulate the DMV
right. Okay. Yeah.
photo taking. Did that at first, and then we'd have people sign their signature on a piece of paper, and we'd photocopy it, and then basically extract that and put it in Photoshop. So that got most of the moving pieces. The next big part was adding the user's credentials in the barcode. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah, that sounds like not how could you possibly have known how to do that?
Yeah, we did it.
Was it just a lot of trial and error, or like did you even have it? Did one of you have an inkling how that might work, or were you just like throwing shit at the wall, seeing what would work?
It was just research.
Yeah.
Just seeing how like actual card companies do that, right? So It's a bunch of research of finding like, because there's I forget what they call them now, but there's like barcode swipers. It's like a little 8x10 device
Mm.
uh, that plugs in your USB on your computer, and you have a little UI interface for it, and you basically just type in what you want it to be encoded as you swipe.
Mm-hmm.
So once we had the card, printed and made, or I should say ID printed and made and cut out, we'd then swipe it in that barcode creator.
Mm-hmm.
It worked over time,
Wow.
and there's machines that are better than others. So obviously we had to go through a couple different machines to get the most optimal
Mm-hmm.
result. Sometimes it was flaky, right? Sometimes it would work. You'd go to scan it, and it would be smooth, and no one would know otherwise.
Right.
But sometimes it wouldn't, and so eventually we'd have to find a superior machine.
Yeah.
100% no error rate.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a fun one, and I think the last piece of the puzzle was to cut it out.
Right.
Because we have 8 on a sheet,
Mm-hmm.
so we'd have to. We found a laminate cutter, which wasn't too hard,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to find the right size. You had to find the right exact size of the IDs in the bordered shape of it. So that took a bit. Figured that out eventually. So we had a couple prototypes after the first probably year, and we started with ourselves and maybe a couple other close friends, and it was hit or miss at first, right? Like sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. Mostly it would work, the local liquor mart.
Right. Right.
But whenever we'd try at the bar,
Mm-hmm.
the club,
Mm-hmm.
it would get turned down or taken
Mm.
at first. So over time, it got better and better, and I'll get to that. But so there was that phase of, okay, we got a product, we got some kind of product that we want to share with people, but obviously it's risky, and you don't want to put your face
Yeah.
out there. So what would happen? Just like you think, you start at the ground roots, like you would be at a party.
Mm-hmm.
This is high school days, so you'd be in college days.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of just started with word of mouth, right? Like our friends that had the first prototypes would show it off,
Mm-hmm.
talk about it. It gets interest really fast. Like we said, these kids,
Yeah. More than anything, there's not even like a hookup for drugs. Like that's like way more common than a hookup for a real, actual good fake ID. I mean, I specifically remember the desperation so many of us had. I was lucky because I got my hands on my brother's old ID, which was real, and I looked enough like him, but it was expired. So like that still was fucked up, and it would only work here and there. But like, yeah, I mean, this is like untold riches that you're on the precipice of making here. I mean, like I can't imagine. Did it happen quickly? Were it like just a massive flood, or was it slow trickle and then it just got really big?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely gained interest quickly, but not to the extent that it eventually grew to.
Mm-hmm.
But the local interest was fast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it was like everyone in our local social circle, even the greater city,
Mm-hmm.
it spread fast,
Mm-hmm.
and people were buying, and eventually we had to build some kind of corporate structure, for lack of better words, like where we had runners.
Yeah, right.
Calling them runners. They were people that went out and sold them for us, basically.
Right. Yeah.
They would have their clientele that had their runners. So it was like a chain
Wow.
of people. Because what would happen is someone would be a customer and they'd buy one,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd like it, they'd use it, it'd work. Then they'd go shop it to their friends,
Yeah.
and they become a runner. So it just kept it's like a chain, and it kept
Yeah.
spreading. Like, wow.
Wow. Yeah.
So we eventually built this barrier of runners around myself and my partner,
Mm-hmm.
and that created some safeguarding, right? So it brought in the money, And I think at first we were charging $150 per ID.
At that time, that's actually quite expensive. But again, if what you're providing, you know, usually you're getting into something, you're like, I don't know how this is going to work out. Maybe you get charged 40, $50, maybe 80, and you're like, uh-oh, this is going to turn out like shit. But if ahead of time you know you're getting something that works, 150 obviously sounds high, especially for however long ago this was. But that's fucking nothing if you know you're going to get the product that's going to work, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened. Like we built the reputation that these were like we had a good product. So people were okay. And that 150, 50 of it would go to the runners. So yeah, then the 100 would come back to us as the founders. So that was pretty much the business model for the whole run. Like no matter what, we as the operators would get $100 per ID, and the runners could charge whatever they wanted. Because the further you go out, they could charge 200, 250, you know, and they could keep $100 to themselves.
Totally, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because you're getting to the point where it's lucrative almost equally for everyone down the line. Like there's certain rich neighborhoods where they could probably charge even more than that, and you would have no idea, nor would you give a shit because you're getting your money at the end of the day. You don't need to even concern yourself with how much it's getting upcharged out, like 2, 3 people down the way. You know, that's it's like, I mean, I'm honestly fucking astounded. This is crazy, and I've never, even in all of my time from, I would say 16 to 20, I never knew anybody who had one this good. And I just know that if I did, not only would I have paid for it, but I would have fucking told everybody that I knew where to get their shit, you know? And I'm the reason I say that is because I'm imagining that's what happened. So like, how quickly did this become a massive operation for you? I don't even know that it did, but I know that it did. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it must have. They just, when the demand is there, there's no possibility that it didn't get really big for you guys.
Yeah, it did. And you know, we were young too, so it was a lot of money for our age. I'd say like a year or two in, it was making 6 figures to start.
Oh, dude. Wow. Okay. Yeah. That is fucking crazy.
Just to start out, like that first couple years, you know, we have partners and like I said, it's a split business model, but it maybe even considering like the money that the runners were making, it was probably making more. I'm speaking to the money, the take home money was at least 6 figures.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I want to take a step back a bit. Like at first I was one of the main runners. I was the first, like I was more of the guy like trying to shop out the product.
Okay, yeah. You're the salesman, yeah.
And my buddy was more of like the development, and he was trying to just iterate on it and improve it, improve the product. So it slowly grew and caught like wildfire, obviously locally. And then as our runners grew, our span reached even further. Like we started going beyond our region, beyond our county. Like it started reaching different states.
Really? I mean, I was going to ask, like, like, obviously you're only making the California ID because you can't have a template for all different states and shit. But obviously a California ID works in New Mexico, Arizona, Washington, wherever you go. It's just an ID is an ID. So because it's a product with potential exponential growth, unlimited growth, I guess, I mean, how do you even have a sense of, besides just the sheer number that you're making, like how do you end up even knowing that your tentacles are starting to reach into other states? Like at what point are you like, oh my God, this is enormous?
Kind of just the obvious of like the amount of orders we were getting. And eventually, like, you know how I mentioned we would take pictures of people?
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah. How do you,
That wasn't scalable.
Right.
Eventually we had to figure out a way to not do that because it's not scalable.
Yeah.
Because if people are ordering one from far away, how do we, right? So we figured out like, and this was even it made the product better, that we just need to have our runners scan their current IDs. So we just scanned their IDs in high res, and they would send us scans of all their customers' IDs. We would put that in a Photoshop. We
Oh, okay, yeah.
extract out their current photo ID, so it's an exact replica of
Yeah.
the photo ID, and we would extract out the signature, and obviously we'd have all their info right there,
Yeah.
their name and everything. So it was a more streamlined process and made more sense.
Oh wow, yeah, that's fucking genius. Yeah. That's so
Yeah,
simple. Yeah, it's just right there. Everything's on their
it's
ID
a
already. Yeah,
way
yeah.
easier, and I think that's kind of what excelled the growth a lot, honestly, because it removed that bottleneck, and it made the product better too. So, and it kind of, yeah, it ended up being like, so if you think about it, if we could fit 8 IDs per sheet of paper, that's $800. And we were getting like, not even the peak, but like as things started rolling up, we were getting 40, 50 a week, so 200 a month. Do the math,
Yeah.
it started adding up to quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
And we're just young kids, and eventually I moved out. I had this money. I didn't tell my parents where I had this money. I had just some part-time job at the time. Uh, so I moved out and had other friends, roommates move in, and it became became the employees of the business.
Yeah.
They were kind of on payroll, and they eventually me and my buddy, as the product got good enough, we kind of stepped out from the actual production of things and became operators and managers, and our friends became the employees that made the product, because we knew the process. We figured out the process of like the skills of how to do it in Photoshop, how to do it with the silk screen, and every other step of the way. So we just taught our friends, and we paid them per hour, $40 an hour or whatever. And at the time, $40 an hour was incredible.
That's incredible now for a lot of, almost everybody. That's an incredible rate. I mean, that's the thing. You're describing a process in which every single person at every single level is happy. The buyer is happy because they get exactly what they want. The employees are happy because they're doing something that isn't, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's teachable, and it's rather easy to soak up. Like, you're just, once you have the hang of it, I'm sure it just became punching in, punching out. And, obviously the money is good for you guys at the very top. I mean, yeah. So tell me then, how long does this, is this still like you're going up at this point? Like, at what point does it start to cap? And like, because obviously you don't do this now, like when do you start to peak, I guess? And how many are you selling per whatever it is? Like, at what point are you peaking, and what does that look like for you guys?
I'd say peak was about 3 years in, 3 or 4 years in, and I was around 21, 22. So I didn't need a fake ID anymore.
Right.
I got past that point, but was still running the business. And the reason why it kind of peaked for me around that time is my partner that helped build it and develop it with me. He stepped out. He removed himself. He went off to college, and he more or less gave the business to me.
Wow.
He kind of just wanted to run his own customers, just to still get some cash flow.
Sure.
But he was like, "You take it. I don't want." He also didn't want the heat. He kind of just wanted to move on.
Yeah.
So I was happy to take it. I was well aware of the risk, but I think we had some risk adverse in place, which we could get into.
Yeah, I definitely do want to talk about that, but keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. Once my partner got out, so more cash flow would come to me because I owned more of the business at that point. and it was, yeah, it got peak like few hundred IDs a month. But I think that's probably when we'd plateau. Like that was
Mm.
probably the cap. I'm sure we could have kept expanding, but we were just kind of smooth sailing,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, at a certain point, if you want to keep expanding, you're really raising the potential of you getting in serious trouble. And at a
Right.
certain point, you're making a lot of money. You're not in it to like become a fucking lord of this. You just started out probably trying to make some money and make some friends happy, and the next thing you know, you got like hundreds of thousands of dollars. But yeah, it's like I totally get why you wouldn't be like, I got to keep going, I got to keep expanding, because you're opening yourself up for, you know, potential actual criminal punishment. Yeah.
Exactly.
What?
Yeah.
Obviously, you knew that, right? Of course, you knew that. You're not an idiot. What? To what degree? I guess throughout the whole process, like even in the beginning, were you thinking like, well, obviously this is illegal. Like how did you work that in your mind at first? Like, if I get caught, I'm in deep shit. But then as it expands and gets like a huge operation, you must be thinking, if I get caught, I'm truly fucked. So like, walk me through that a little bit. Like the evolution of your thought in terms of, yeah, this is illegal, but whatever. I'm just gonna do it for some friends and make a little bit of money. Into like, you're like the kingpin of fake IDs. How does your mind work throughout all this?
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to remember exactly the growth of that,
Mm-hmm.
but when it first started out, I don't think we really cared. I don't think we really worried about it too
Mm-hmm.
much.
Yeah.
We kind of just were trying to see if it could be a viable option, a viable product. But as things grew, like when we became like that stage where we got runners in front of
Mm-hmm.
us, it was recurring business. We then started to put some safeguards in place, some barriers, right? You had to put barriers in front of you.
Yeah.
So we would we eventually got an office to do the work in, uh, and the office switched from like a couple different spots over time. But
Mm.
every time we got an office, because we had fake IDs for ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
different names, it wasn't our real name.
Ah. Okay.
Lease. So we would get a lease for an office under a fake
Yeah.
name.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's one barrier, right? So like even if that office is found when
Mm-hmm.
we're not there, obviously, they wouldn't be able to trace it back to us.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
Another step is obviously like a burner phone.
Mm-hmm.
We all had burner phones at the time. That was like the best option for that. Um, we had burner emails because a lot of the time, eventually, like I said, when our runners started scanning people's IDs, they
Mm-hmm.
would need to get them to us somehow.
Yeah.
Email was the quickest way, but we had to do it securely. I forget what app we used. We just used some secure email app, and then we would just delete it afterwards. That
Mm-hmm.
that probably was like the biggest hole
Mm.
that could have been risky
Yeah.
because, yeah, in hindsight, uh, and we had PO boxes that were under fake names. So essentially, using our own product, our own fake
Yeah.
IDs,
Yeah.
we created barriers around ourselves. Uh, and then actually in practice, when we would make them, we always wore gloves
Mm-hmm.
because laminate, is very
Yeah.
sticky with fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
So always wore gloves, always cleaned up. Uh, we locked all our hard drives, stuff like that. So even if there was, God forbid, some kind of raid,
Mm-hmm.
that stuff would be hard to incriminate on. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm sure there'd be a way, but we did our best,
Right. Right. Right.
and we were young kids. I'm sure there was holes in what we did, but we tried to put as much barriers in place. I think where the biggest risk comes is just people.
Yeah,
People.
that's the leaky mouths of people. You got to wonder, like, who out there is like talking to their fucking dad, who's a cop, or their mom, who's a judge, or whatever the fuck. God knows who's saying what. If a parent finds a kid's fake ID, they're gonna ask questions. How did you get this? And who knows what they're answering? Like, and at a certain point, it's completely uncontrollable. I mean, even just 100 fake IDs out in the world produced by you and your partner, that's 100 kids with loose lips. Who knows what's going on out there in the world? I guess my next question is like, it doesn't sound like it, but was there any point where you had a reason to think you might be exposed in one area or another? Was it just smooth sailing until you were like, you know what, I'm done?
There wasn't any huge incident that occurred, but there was time, to speak to that specifically, like there was a time where things got too comfortable, and like I said, it's the people were a risk.
Yeah.
The people talking. So like, for example, at one point we had moved our operations to the basement of our house. It wasn't in the office.
Okay.
I forget why we did that, but I think just for proximity, which probably wasn't the smartest idea, but we put the operations in our basement, and we would have our runners meet with us very close to the grocery store next door or down the street. So our runners knew where we operated for most of them, and our reach got so far, like I was saying, beyond the county to further upstate, out of state, and I was here eventually at one point to where I got truly concerned. I was hearing relayed information back to me that kids were speaking my name, my specific name. I don't even know how they knew that. Back down the chain of people, or like just random people speaking, oh, he makes these fake IDs.
Yeah.
And that was worrisome. It's like, how did these random people far away, getting a hold of my personal information?
Yeah,
unless my runners are talking.
But even then, it's like a game of telephone. That's so weird. Like, but it makes sense that shit like that would happen. When an operation is so big, it's almost like anything bad that can happen, it's almost like it will happen. You have to think that way at least, because there's so many variables, and each ID is going not only to one person, but through at least, 3 people, maybe more. And it's like the math on that, it's almost like, obviously you ended up fine, but if you kept going, I'm sure there would have been a point that it was just inevitable that something would have come crashing down. So yeah. I guess, when do you start to say to yourself, I'm done? I guess what I'm having a hard time understanding is, like, you're making so much money, you are able to operate in a space where you're not super paranoid. When you're dealing drugs, it's like you got to be looking over your shoulder all the time, especially at the scale at which you were doing IDs. But even the type of crime that you're doing, it's like, it's so easy to shrug at that. They're going to get a fake ID somehow, somewhere anyway. And like, they might as well have a really good one, and whatever the fuck. We could talk about the morality of it another time. But like, there's no pressing reason necessarily for you to wipe your hands of it and go. So what does lead you to that, and what does that process look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happened in between what we've been talking about and then the final departure, but it ultimately just led to, I just wanted to step out and pursue a career of my own, like a legitimate career path.
Sure, yeah.
So I ultimately handed off the business to another friend, eventually over time, and I made a deal with him saying, I'll give you this business, I'll teach you how to operate it, I'll teach you how to supply it. My deal is I keep my runners, and I give you my orders, and I take 50%. So I would get 50% of all my orders. He could build his own runners, his own customers, and he keeps 100%. So it was a good deal for him.
Yeah.
But obviously it's putting risk on him now.
Yeah.
He took the deal. So that's kind of, it got passed on, and it lived through him, and I'd say around like 23 is when that happened. Probably 23. So at that time I had moved away from that that house where we had it in the basement. I moved further south, kind of got stepped away from it a bit, just so I wasn't in such heat and in the midst of it. And he more or less took over, and it funded even that 50%. It kind of funded my lifestyle for a couple years. Like I didn't have a job, but I was learning my skills that I have now for my career. So it allowed me to do that, which is great. It paid for my housing, it paid for my car, my food, and it supported me for years. And I was fully stepped out.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to learn skill sets for actual career because I had all the time.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So that it kind of just phased out like that. It was like a slow burn phase out where he's also slowly phased out of it, and I think it kind of just died out. And I think what was the ultimate nail in the coffin for it was the new California.
Right, that's what I was going to ask. Like, because when that comes, the house of cards falls, right? Like you can't duplicate the shit that they come up with now. It's like you got to have like warehouses and scientists trying to copy, like do that shit, Dude, I remember, this is just a little anecdote, but I remember when my family moved from New Jersey to California, the New Jersey driver's licenses didn't even have people's pictures on them. It was just like a fucking card with someone's name written on it and some like stamp from the state of New Jersey. I remember going, I was little and I remember this. Because I was living in California, I knew what IDs looked like, and I saw my dad's, which was still New Jersey, and I was like, Dad, what the fuck is that? But it's just like a testament to how open to counterfeiting this shit was. And where we are now, dude, you look at a California ID now, and it's like, dude, good luck, 19-year-olds trying to figure that shit out.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask you, speaking of 19-year-olds trying to figure it out, when you would go to these people, like the laminate people and the barcode dude, whatever, I'm sure you would approach them with kind of like trying to seem like professional, but they know what's up. They know what's up. What is that interaction like? Like at the very beginning when you're going to a guy that has like the wherewithal, the know-how, and he's looking at you like, what the fuck does this kid want? Is it just unspoken? Nobody asks shit. Everyone's just like, I'm going to make money, so I'm not going to ask anything. Or are they like asking you like, are you legit and you're lying? Like, how does it work at that stage?
Yeah. I mean, the supplies that were black market, it was kind of an unspoken thing, more or less. And communication was all done online. So we never had to meet like face to face or anything like that. But for up front, like the barcode stuff, we would just say, oh, we need key cards. We need to make key cards for our company or our event or something like that. We would just fib a little bit, just to say why we need the laminate. But if they countered with some questions, it would be debunked really quick. Right. I think it was just the unspoken thing. Like they wanted the customer. They wanted us. So we just knew that we had to be discreet and reserved with our words, and they were too. So it kind of just was like everybody benefits.
Why upset the apple cart? And so when you're fully up and operating and making money, and also I'm assuming being very consumed time-wise, people in your life, who knows, who doesn't know, how are you spinning your, I'm sure you're not like broadcasting how much money you're making, but at the same time, if people know you only have a part-time job, what are you telling them about your ability to live well? Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I didn't live too abundantly. I didn't live lavishly and like throw it in people's faces or anything like that. But I still had to support myself.
Right. So people are like, this motherfucker's unemployed. What's going on here? What would you say? Like, how would that work?
Well, my friends, the social circle I and my brother, they all knew.
Okay. Yeah.
So I didn't really have to hide it on that front. I think the biggest people I had to hide it from was my parents.
Right. That's the one that really pops out.
So
How would that work?
yeah, and I I just milked the part-time job for a while,
Mm-hmm.
which I think they just kind of assumed was supporting me. And eventually, as I was learning those skill sets I was talking about, and uh, I I was saying like, oh, I'm picking up freelance work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also doing freelance work with this new career path I'm pursuing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I kind of, and again, I didn't live lavishly. I just got a normal apartment, had a normal car, didn't like go spend thousands and thousands, you know. So I didn't raise any big red flags to my parents at the time. But I will say this, eventually, as the business was phasing out, I did tell my parents.
Uh,
I did tell them everything. I just
what
wanted
was that conversation like?
they were just in shock, you know?
Yeah.
Just, they kind of were like, oh, we knew you'd get into something like this.
That's my favorite part for sure. That it's like I
Yeah.
knew something was up. You're too fucking sly and slick. I knew something was going on. Wow, that's crazy. So, also just the actual money that's coming in. It's all cash, obviously. What are you doing with that money? You can't put it in a bank without explaining it. So, like, is it sitting in a mattress? Like, what the fuck's going on?
It was mostly sitting in a safe, just stockpiled.
Wow. Wow.
And we would just eventually, slowly just put it in bank accounts. But it mostly just stayed in cash form.
Yeah.
I think we ever really tried to, launder it, but
Right.
get it into an account. It just stayed in cash form. And I remember I went and, just funny side story, I went and bought a car.
Mm.
Nothing crazy. It was like 10 grand at the time,
Right.
which I think over 10 grand is when it triggers a flag, right?
Yeah, there's something about that number. Like, it's something about cash and 10 grand in deposits and withdrawals at a bank and other
Yeah.
stuff too, like big purchases. Yeah. So, anyway, yeah. Okay.
So it was just, the car was just under 10 grand. It was like 9 grand something.
Yeah.
And I met the person to, test drive it, and I was like, yeah, I'll take it. I'll buy it. And then I was like, one sec, let me go grab the cash. And I come back with a lot of cash, and she was like,
Wow.
the lady was like, whoa, are you a drug dealer?
Yeah.
She straight called me out.
Dude, I bet. Well, here's something that keeps coming into my mind, and I'm not quite sure the way to say it, but let me try to say it. Doing what you guys were doing. Okay, most of the versions of this kind of story are like drugs of one way or another. Like you're dealing something illicit that people want, and it's almost always drugs. And with drugs dealing comes not only way more intense attention from potential law enforcement, not just cops, but DEA, international agencies, but also other people that deal drugs don't want people who deal drugs to be dealing drugs because they want to be the ones dealing the drugs, and they'll fucking kill you or at least threaten to kill you and make you stop dealing drugs. That happens all the time. In the thing you were doing, and I hesitate to use this word, but I keep coming back to it in my mind. It's like the perfect illegal thing to be doing, because there's not a whole bunch of like cartels or particularly dangerous people in the business of fake IDs. It's a little too much work. Customers only come once. That's not worth it to people like that. They want repeat customers. Yeah, there's nobody out there that's like, oh, these two fucking knuckleheads from wherever the fuck they're dealing with it, they're making their IDs, like, let's go cut their heads off. Let's go threaten to kill their family. There's nobody like that because nobody's doing it. So it's like I doubt this crossed your mind, but at some point you must have realized, wait a second, this is like I've fallen into like the perfect illegal thing to be doing. Because even again, even if you do get caught, you're not getting some kind of hefty ass drug sentence, like it's still the crime that it is, which is like Nah, who fucking cares? You know what I mean? Like, I know it's a crime and I know people would care, but at the same time, no one's going to be up in arms about two kids making fake IDs in their basement. That's just not something people are going to get upset about, you know? So it's like, yes, it's illegal. Obviously, it's illegal, but, and I hate the term victimless crime, but like, it's something near, it's adjacent to that. And it's also, it's not you're not in a larger criminal underworld. You're just guys doing this thing, and it's like you can chill and not worry about both law enforcement and other people encroaching on territory, coming in saying we need to make this amount off of you or else we're going to do da 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 da. There's none of that mafia hardball cartel shit going on. Like, and I guess that leads to my question: was there any point where conflict or potential trouble seemed like it was potentially going to come your way? Or was it basically smooth sailing until you were like, I'm done?
I'm just to add to that, I fully agree to your assessment there.
Yeah.
That's kind of how we felt about it the whole time. Because, we could have gotten into selling drugs.
Right. Yeah.
Almost anybody can.
Right.
But we didn't, and we saw this as like more of like a white collar crime. Like it was, we weren't getting people addicted to drugs. We weren't, so yeah, and there was no competition. There was no fear.
But even with white collar crime, white collar criminals are stealing money from people. You're not doing that either. Like you're just giving people something for a product you're making for them. I mean, you're making money off of that, but it's just like anything else. You're buying something online and then getting it, and it's a good product. Like, obviously, it's illegal, but aside from the fact that it is, it's hard to see people being hurt by this process. So even calling it white collar crime, it's like, yeah, but you're not fucking Bernie Madoff. You know what I mean? Like, you're not stealing from people. Stealing's fucking terrible, and that you didn't do that. I'm not trying to like defend you, and not like you need defense. That's not my point. My point is like, it's just this weird niche of like, in every way you look at it, you're just like, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's interesting.
Right, I totally. That's how we felt about it too.
Yeah.
And to answer your question, it was mostly smooth sailing.
Yeah.
Like, I can think of a couple incidents. I think the only biggest concern or risk is the people close to you. Like, there was a couple fallouts throughout the years where I'd had a buddy who was my right hand guy. We have a fallout. Now he's a liability, right?
Yeah. That's interesting.
You could go to law enforcement, right?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of those instances. Luckily none of them were out to ruin my life.
Yeah.
Or my buddy's life.
Yeah.
So it didn't turn into anything like that. But there was times where my buddy that helped develop and build the business, he got his own house too, in the same city, and it became the party pad. Like, it was like crazy parties, right? Like, and drug use, just crazy things would happen there, which was just the stage we were in. It was just the era,
right.
of our lives, and it would get cops called to his house for various reasons, not anything related to fake IDs.
Right. Yeah.
One incident, like, I don't exactly remember what happened, but it was enough for the cops to barge in.
Whoa.
I think there was like someone was like passed out on the front street or something like that.
Yeah.
Or a girl was passed out on the front street. I don't know. I don't fully remember, but it caused the cops to barge in and storm the house.
Damn,
and
that's intense.
They even went into my buddy's master bedroom, and they see fake IDs laying everywhere.
Oh my God.
They see evidence. They see the print, the screen print. They see the tools, and nothing happened.
Wow, dude.
wild, right? It's like I think they even, if I recall correctly, they even pointed it out like, we're not going to do anything about this because we're not called here for this.
Yeah.
We're called here for like some domestic issue, right? So it's like they just kind of dismissed it and went and helped the girl and tried to
Yeah.
alleviate the situation and moved on and never came back, which was wild. So it's like when stuff some that happened, that was
Yeah.
like probably midpoint through.
Hmm.
That was like put in my head like, okay, there's not that much high risk.
But that's the
If it
thing, dude. If a cop can barge into a place, see all of the evidence of your criminal operation, and just be like, fuck it. Like, then how bad could it possibly be? Here's a good way to think of it. If that was, even if that was just weed back then when it was illegal, his ass would have been in jail that night. Period. Like, it doesn't matter. The cops couldn't be like, well, we're not going to deal with that. They would have found it, and that would have been that. And that's just fucking weed. You could go to a store and buy weed now. You can't go to a store and buy a fake ID. Like, there's just a weird thing about fake IDs where people are just like, and again, in this case, even cops, they're just like, fuck it. It's hard to
yeah,
get up and upset about it.
yeah,
I'm sure some people are, and whatever the fuck. Everybody's entitled to their opinions, but like, it's just it's that weird niche that you guys found that is just like,
yeah.
again, I hesitate to use this word, perfect. It's like the perfect
It
thing,
was it was the perfect, yeah, crime, perfect product too. There was
Yeah,
so much demand for it. It was lucrative. It made the chain of people wealthy too.
yeah,
So yeah, and it was fun. It was a wild ride, and it grew to multiple six figures
hmm,
and supported me for years. Uh, had a big chunk of savings from it,
yeah, I
which was
bet,
great.
yeah.
And yeah, I learned a lot. I pretty much learned how to run a business.
Well, that's the other
Because
thing too. It's not. It's
yeah,
not. But if you strip away the thing it is that you're doing, specifically the product you're making,
yeah,
it sounds like it was just like any other successful business that had a product that was in high demand for people of a certain age demographic,
hmm,
and that's kind of that. Uh,
yeah,
it's just crazy that it's interesting that like all it took was two guys that were just like, well, if we learn every single little part about how to make these things, we will be able to make them, and then people will want them, and then we will get rich. It's just like, it's really interesting how simple it really is sometimes. And
yeah,
obviously, the reason a lot of people didn't think of that about, specifically fake IDs at that time and place is because it's illegal. That's one reason why. But, I think, again, the reason why people who typically do try to come up with criminal enterprises like this, I think the reason why they don't do that is, again, because it's a one and done thing. There's no repeat customer potential at all. The only way is if someone loses it, but like that's not something to bank on. Uh,
yeah.
it's just fucking crazy, man. I mean, this is amazing. Do you ever tell people that like you meet now about this shit, or you just kind of keep it in the past?
Very rarely.
Yeah,
It only certain people or situations. I just thought of some cool story to share. Like
yeah. Let's have it.
in the heyday of it all, our IDs were getting really good,
Hmm.
and I think our bar of quality was like, will these pass in Vegas? Will these pass
Mm-hmm.
in a Hollywood club?
Mm-hmm.
Those were like the top things. Is like, can you go to Hollywood? Can you get in any club? Can you go to Vegas and get in any club?
Mm-hmm.
And we were getting there. I remember going to Vegas multiple times with all our group of friends, with all our fake IDs, 19, 20 years old, getting into numerous clubs. And
Wow.
I don't think, I don't recall any of our friends getting a takeaway. So that was awesome. And one specific story is like I don't know if you know of the W Hotel in Hollywood.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
They have like a club at the top,
Yep. Yeah.
the pool, like Dre's Club or
Mm-hmm.
something. That was like the poppin' nightclub to go to. we were 19, 20, and my buddy, he kind of knew someone there, so he organized an event, and he was also 20 himself. He organized an event for, I think, his birthday, so he had a huge guest list, like 100 of us. We're all pretty much underage, right?
Yeah.
And all of us got there, and I think that was the one time where it was like it was like a hit or miss, like something like half of them got taken.
Oh, really? Wow.
I think once the bouncer caught one,
Right,
he was like,
right.
there's something fishy, and he just kept finding it. But then like half of us got in too, so it was a funny situation, because my buddy was like getting heat like crazy.
I'm
from
sure,
the owners, like, okay, what's up with all these underage fake IDs? But while we're upstairs just partying, still underage and stuff.
Being the people who made them, yeah. I mean, that's hilarious too. I'm sure all the people that didn't get in were texting your buddy, just like, "What the fuck, man? This is a piece of shit. You sold me this fucking thing," you know?
Right.
Yeah. Wow, dude. Yeah, it's weird though that the bouncer let in a bunch of people, but also didn't a bunch of other people when you and your partner know damn well they all are exactly the same thing. Is kind of interesting. Like, what the fuck is that psychologically? Like, why is he not being like, bye? Why is he like, oh, that one's real, this one's fake, and they're the same fucking thing? Like, that's weird, you know? It seems so fucking arbitrary.
I'll give you some insight that there is some quality control when it comes to making it.
Got it.
So there is some spectrum of, lesser quality to greater quality in the way you make it. So if there's one of our friends slacking one night,
right,
it could turn out a lesser quality.
Right.
Yeah, we did have to have some quality standards for sure.
Yeah.
As a business, but yeah, there was times like that where there would be a big run of IDs that got taken, got returned, had bad feedback, that we had to basically either make new ones or give their money back, or figure out a better process so it doesn't happen again, all the above. So there was iteration. It wasn't just always like, oh, these are perfect. So it was like, it comes back to the business side of things, right? It's like we learned how to make and put all those standards in place, like a real product, like a real business. So it was good. It was a good learning lesson in that sense.
Yeah, and also it's the kind of thing where it's like, why would someone say it isn't up to snuff, or it got rejected here, or it got taken there? Why would they say that if all they wanted was, like, all they want in the end is an ID that works? There's nobody that's going to be like, give me my fucking money back and I'm going to keep it. Like, it's not enough money, first of all, but it's like, it's just like a naturally calibrated thing that is conducive to it being streamlined in a good way for you and your partner. It's just all the way down the line, it's just like good, like a good thing for you. The fact that you didn't get caught makes it great, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy to have something that in your late teens, early 20s, you did for years that was illegal, but not that crazy terrible, and you made a ton of money from it, and you never got caught, and you never have to think about it again, except when you're like, wow, I really fucking did that, This is the kind of thing where it's like, when you're like 75, you're going to be like, wow, I did that. I'm fucking crazy. I really lived, Right. But yeah, man. I mean, this is cool, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show and telling this story. This is amazing. I'm going to be thinking about this one all day, dude. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very intriguing story, man. I even get lost in it myself. Like, wow, I can't believe all that stuff happened.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. I mean, at this point now, you're probably just like, the memory of it, the fact that it's somewhat foggy, that it's so long ago, it must just be like, wow, did I really? Yeah, I did, didn't I? Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah, it was a wild ride.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Sounds like it. Yeah, sounds like it. Cool, man. Well, thank you again very much for coming on. We'll let you know when the episode's going to drop. If you have anything that you want to tell us about after the fact, just email us. You know how to get in touch. Yeah, we'll talk to you soon, man.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Whoa.